Hey, what's going on, Who That Nation? It is yours truly, TJ Jones, the host of the State of the Saints podcast. And today I want to talk a little bit about Week 17, give my final thoughts. We all see now that the New Orleans Saints know their fate. They have a wild card weekend matchup against a team that we all know and we all hate. I'm talking about the Minnesota Vikings. We know a couple years ago, the Minnesota Vikings in dramatic fashion to the Who Dat Nation knocked off the Saints. And with the last 10 seconds on the clock, they called it the Minneapolis Miracle. And now, a couple years later, the Minnesota Vikings will go to New Orleans. And they will take on the Saints in a wild card round of the playoffs. The Saints now are the 3 seed. And from the looks of it, it looks as if the New Orleans Saints will have to go on the road for the remainder of the playoffs if they want to make it all the way to the postseason. But first off, I want to say, man, what a game last night against the San Francisco 49ers and the Seattle Seahawks. I mean, it had everything, man. I mean, that was a game that had you on the edge of your seat. Both teams really wanted it really bad. But the 49ers, they played really well. I'm not going to take anything away from them. The Seattle Seahawks couldn't really stop them most of the time. And the 49ers actually got the win, stopping Hollister at the very end, knocking him, out of the end zone with just 1 yard. You can say what you want to say about that game. I feel like the referees kind of, didn't do their job towards the end. We seen linebacker Warner, hold the tight end for the Seattle Seahawks. There was no review for that pass interference. My question is, if you're going to put a rule like that in place, why don't you even try to review that? But, I mean, whatever. I mean, people are saying that, Vegas owns the NFL. I look at the line, the over-under, and the 49ers were a 3.5-point favorite, and they win by 4. But anyway, the New Orleans Saints playing the Minnesota Vikings. I think the Minnesota Vikings are a really good football team. Defensively, they're one of the best. They're the creme de la creme. They got Daniil Hunter. They got Linval Joseph. They got Everson Griffin. I mean, they got Anthony Barr. I mean, they got guys that are playmakers on all levels. And then you're going to have Dalvin Cook back in this game. Dalvin Cook has not played in the last 2 weeks. He didn't play in that game against the Green Bay Packers, and he didn't play yesterday in the season finale versus the Chicago Bears. So they've been resting him, and they're a completely different team when Dalvin Cook plays. The New Orleans Saints, they won 42-10 on yesterday. So that's a lot of optimism if you're a Saints fan to see that the Saints are really taking this serious. And I mean, this is a home game. For the last couple of years, they play Minnesota. They always play in U.S. Bank Stadium for some apparent reason. Now we get them in the Superdome. And hopefully the Saints can be able to handle up on their business. Like I said, it's an uphill climb for the New Orleans Saints. It's very rare that you have 3 13-3 teams going into the postseason. I've never seen anything like this before in my life. In my lifetime, I never seen 3 teams be 13-3. And a 13-3 team playing on wild card weekend. But it is a possibility that the New Orleans Saints can host the NFC Championship game in New Orleans. I mean, if they handle business against Minnesota, they go up to Lambeau and they beat the Green Bay Packers. And, to be honest with you, I mean, we see Philly is in the playoffs, but nobody believes that Philly is going to beat Seattle. So if Seattle can win that game and go to San Francisco, and that's the third time that they'll be facing the 49ers. Who knows? I mean, the last couple of games that they played, the first one went into overtime. The second game was like a yard short from Seattle winning. So Seattle can go into Levi Stadium and beat the San Francisco 49ers. I mean, so if the Saints do what they're supposed to do, we can possibly have a Seattle Seahawks, New Orleans Saints NFC Championship game in the Superdome. I'm very interested to know how this game is going to play out versus the Minnesota Vikings. Kirk Cousins played like hot garbage on Monday Night Football. A lot of people in the Minnesota fan base, I'm pretty sure, are not optimistic about him going into the Superdome and getting a win. But there's a different type of Kirk Cousins. There's a primetime Kirk Cousins who dims in the big lights, And then you have Kirk Cousins that's around 12 o'clock that throws for like 300 yards and makes little to no mistakes at all. So, I mean, this guy's a prime example of you know what I'm saying, of a stock market quarterback. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes he's up and sometimes he's down. But I think the Saints are going to take this very serious. I'm going to talk a little bit about the game. I'm going to talk about matchups throughout the week leading up to Wild Card weekend. And hopefully we'll be excited about the outcome. But I would like to hear from you. What do you think about the Week 17 matchups? What do you think about the playoff seedings? Do you think the Saints can run the table and get back to Miami for the first time in 10 years and go to the Super Bowl? Comment down below, like and share this video. This has been a State of the Saints podcast. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com, search State of the Saints podcast, and also facebook.com, search State of the Saints podcast. Till next time, all I got to say is, who dat?